If there's one thing I love about competitive games involving character selection, it's the incessant debates and arguments present throughout the player base's discussion boards, Reddit, Twitter, and such regarding those characters. If you spend all but 5 minutes browsing Twitter, you'll find a million posts from mains juiced up on that good shit on why their character is overrated or how they use one bad matchup to invalidate the rest of their main's performance like it's checkmate atheist. Actually, it's mostly just Zamba, but I mean hey, Rob is big so therefore bottom tier. Anyways, the dynamic comprising the bulk of Smash Ultimate's discourse is pretty funny to say the least. Most players who main top or high tier characters have a penchant for believing their main is not as good as people make them out to be, with the sole exception of ESAM, while players who feel low or mid tiers believe that their main's got sauce and should be respected more. We're gonna focus on the latter for today's video by talking about the 5 most underrated characters in my personal opinion. Obviously the terms underrated and overrated are subjective and therefore prone to disagreements, but Cody was complaining about wanting to edit something other than why no one plays, so I thought it would be a fun diversion. Let's go through my thought process for each of my picks. To start, it should go without saying that Smash Ultimate is as close to a balanced roster as we can get. The disparity in power and capability from the best character to the worst is not insurmountable to the point where the worst character, no matter the caliber of player, is unable to take down the best. That being said, when constructing tier lists on who the strongest fighters are, it may be difficult to take into consideration every nuance or edge case one can think of. So while the top 10 or 20 fighters are pretty much undisputed, the 20th to 50th places have historically been more ambiguous, often resulting in mid-tiers fluctuating wildly depending on who you ask. Lack of representation majorly contributes to the inconsistency in placement for these characters, and while on occasion there may be a breakout performance at a major, one strong run doesn't make for a convincing argument on why X character is considered high or top tier. Top tiers are regarded as such on account of not just being very strong in concept, but also emphasis on consistently placing well in mid-high and top-level competition. Then again, that might be why mid-tier mains have such a high opinion of their characters because they may know something we don't, something that the community would have discovered quickly if more players used them. In fact, that's taking place a lot lately. While he's not on the list, Mega Man has seen 2 top 3 placements at recent majors, Peanut at Riptide and MPG at Apex. So, with that in mind, these are 5 characters who I believe have the potential to really shake things up after some more time passes. First on the list is Lucas, the worst Ness quote-unquote, a stigma he's had to carry ever since he was introduced in Brawl. Lucas is a very polarizing character, one who I definitely plan to make a Why No One Plays episode on in the future. He's not considered an echo fighter to Ness in light of them having noticeably different movesets and strengths now compared to before. Even so, the reasons to use Lucas have often been overshadowed by reasons to use Ness. The biggest one I can think of is that while he's still extremely versatile, a sore spot for Lucas was that his moveset was tailor-made to be more focused on situational aspects of a game rather than being generally strong, on top of having moves that are individually incredible, bordering on broken, but not very cohesive with his other moves. For example, Lucas's edge guarding is probably top 5 in the game, having several attacks that effectively invalidate so many characters. He has 2 very powerful 2-framing attacks like down angle forward tilt and down smash, and 3 long-range edge guarding / gimping tools through PK Freeze, PK Fire, and PK Thunder, all of which can destroy opponents with bad recoveries. One other thing is that Lucas's attacks are deceptively safe on shield, allowing him to pressure enemies up close whether on the ground or the air. So he has both close and long-range pressure. However, there are times when Lucas feels really awkward to play as he lacks the conventional strengths most top-tier characters possess, such as a robust out-of-shield game or the ability to mix up his neutral game and approach. What makes Lucas feel devastating at times and underwhelming at others is due in part to the experience of fighting him mostly devolving into a matchup check. Like I said, he has a ton of situationally overpowered tools like how effortlessly he can gimp, edge guard a 2-frame you, or tether grab that can zare, stuff that Ness doesn't have. But against a player who is fully aware of where and when Lucas is threatening, his neutral becomes exceedingly predictable. I plan to go over more of his gameplay issues when I make his Why No One Plays, but in TLDR fashion, Lucas's moveset and attributes may not necessarily be better or worse than Ness, but on the surface, they're divergent from what players consider valuable in competitive play. Or basically, Ness is strong at ABC while Lucas is strong at XYZ. Then again, I believe this makes him a potential late bloomer. Smash is progressively transitioning into a more whiff-punish trap-heavy meta spearheaded by Steve's rise to prominence. Lucas happens to be more effective than Ness in this regard. It may come with the added difficulty of a steep learning curve, but Lucas's tools can make him a strong answer to several meta powerhouses like Fox, Roy, Aegis, Kazuya, Rob, and Steve. We have a few token reps like Regalo and Choco Taco, but I feel like as more players discover how to make Lucas more consistent, we might see him pop up more. Up next, we have Wii Fit Trainer. Despite being significantly buffed from Smash 4 to Ultimate, as well as receiving further buffs through version updates, they have yet to make any meaningful strides in competitive. Most players collectively rate them around mid-tier, so they are tournament viable, but sort of suffer from the same problems Lucas does, having a wide arsenal of tools, just not the ones that everyone wants. WeFit's combo game and damage racking capabilities are quite strong, especially in tandem with deep breathing. Unlike most close quarters combatants, they have not one, but two fantastic projectiles that can pressure a ton of characters into approaching, but their lackluster mobility and comically small hitboxes effectively discourages approaching as they get spaced out by swordies and boxed out by brawlers, leading to them depending on Sun Salutation and Header to steadily rack up damage to then hopefully fish for a kill. Unfortunately, this means that WeFit trainers find themselves spending the majority of a game chilling at the ledge, repeatedly chucking soccer balls and yellow orbs of light at their opponent in the hopes that they run out of patience and go charging right into them, to which they can either go for an edge guard or hard punish. Here's the thing, that means more often than not, WeFit has to rely on stray hits to close out stocks despite being a character whose range, or lack thereof, is usually associated with kill setups, not really single hits. That's more for swordies or heavyweights. It's not to say that they don't have any semblance of combos or kill setups, it's just hindered by how risky it is because of their movement not being as fast or scary as the likes of Wolf, for instance. Another potential issue is that while WeFit has a relatively fair matchup spread, the characters they lose to or struggle against just so happen to be very popular, like Wolf, Roy, Ness, Cloud, Rob, Aegis, and so on, making them rather intimidating to main, and is one of the reasons why they play super campy. But just like Lucas, WeFit excels at shutting down opponents who run out of patience and recklessly approach or attack you. While their edge guarding isn't as dangerous, the existence of a charge shot projectile as well as a near infinite amount of mix-up and setups involving Header gives them some of the best ledge trapping pressure you can imagine. The hard part is getting their opponent into that situation in the first place. My thought process behind considering WeFit as underrated has a lot to do with having actual long-range pressure. Most close-range fighters like Mario, Wolf, or Joker may have a projectile, but it's really only there to rack up damage or set up, whereas WeFit has one that straight out kills, so if push comes to shove, you can go Samus neutrally on your opponent in last stock lasted situations, placing the onus on your opponent to be more risky, whereas you can just sit back and camp. It might sound degenerate, but in competition you do whatever it takes to win. Moving on, let's talk about Pit, and by extension Pit 2, I mean Dark Pit. Famously considered the most painfully average characters in all of Smash, they've been viewed in a very indifferent light. Ultimate's iteration of the Pits is probably the best we've gotten so far, and consequently that means they're the most viable in tournaments, yet even to this day, the consensus on them is that they're just average. Almost all of Pit's assets are complemented by a flaw in equal measure. Their impressive ground speed is offset by poor air physics. Their long-lasting hitboxes are offset by inconsistent range, most notably their aerials. Their strong recovery is kept in check by being easy to edge guard, especially in the two-framing department. Their respectable neutral game is restricted by their limited advantage and disadvantage state. None of this makes him a particularly bad character per se, but it also prevents him from being an exceptionally good one too. This ultimately makes him a fundamentals-oriented character whose performance hinges more on how well the player understands the game on a universal level, not so much Pit's own merits, and that's where I think they don't fly as high, no pun intended. As a Fundies character, Pit and Dark Pit will always be judged against other Fundies characters, such as Rob, Palutena, Lucina, Cloud, and Wolf. Common sense dictates whoever offers the greatest return on investment is gonna be the most popular one. Sadly, that's almost never Pit. Credit where credit is due. If there's one thing Pit has that the other Fundies characters don't, it's flexibility. He's a very comfortable character to play and isn't too lacking in either offense or defense, but being a jack of all trades, master of none, there's nothing players can really tap into and exploit to the fullest. So if they're average, why am I saying they're underrated? The answer is that we don't know where their average actually is. It's true that most characters cannot perform him in various areas. Mario has a better combo game, Fox has more mobility, Shulk has more range, Samus has better projectiles, but in exchange, each of these characters has a weakness that Pit doesn't. Average isn't necessarily a bad thing, and not counting the quote-unquote inconsistency with Pit's neutral or forward air, Pit's a very consistent character. I think a lot of people forget that since Ultimate's roster is relatively balanced, average still puts you in a decent position. Also, I don't care what anyone says, Guardian Orbiters are insanely broken. It's an aerial shield that's positive on break and spammable. Dark Pit's Electroshock arm is stronger than a smash attack with bad DI, mark my words. I'm not saying Pit is top tier, and that goes for WeFit, Lucas, and the other two characters. This list is not about who is secretly overpowered, just characters who really deserve more representation than they currently have. Let's continue, this time with Robin. I made a Wino and place on them just recently, so this is fresh in my mind. This will sound a bit contradictory to what I said in their video, but I think Robin is criminally underrated and underplaced. I will acknowledge that when we take into consideration how stacked the Swordy roster is, with Sephiroth, Cloud, Shulk, Aegis, Roy, and Lucina being way more effective in some way, Robin is seen as a strict downgrade. But Robin is to Swordies what Lucas is to Ness or WeFit is to other short-range characters, an XYZ character while they're ABC. To start, I feel like I should clarify something about their durability. Not many play Robin for the fact that they're essentially the only character whose moves you cannot spam in a game where attacks are spammed constantly. However, the justification behind that is purely experiential in that it has nothing to do with their effective power. Them feeling bad to play doesn't mean they're objectively bad, if that makes sense. When armed with Love and Sword, Robin has kill power rivaling or even exceeding that of Roy or Marth without the Sour Spot. So even though you can only use like 8 attacks with them, you really only need 3 or 4 to rack up 80% or outright kill them. As for the tomes, Robin's defensive play isn't half bad, at least in the Added Shield department. It's no Game & Watch, but their Get Off Me tools are serviceable enough to get the job done, and they can make use of their other tools to buy time for whatever's offline to come online again. Something else I feel like people forget about is that Robin is one of the few swordies who can mix up their neutral game. Characters like Roy, Ike, or Lucina have one-dimensional gameplay due to their specials being extensions of their normals. Robin has sword attacks, and projectiles, and trapping tools, and a command grab, giving them more options to surprise opponents and the ability to force approaches. A common argument against them is how slow they are, and that is a fair point. At the same time, Robin has decent air physics, and most of Ultimate's combat takes place in the air anyway. Also, to repeat, their slow ground game is made less problematic by having tools to force their opponent to come to them. Robin's a good character. I seriously don't understand why people rate them so low. I get that they may feel uncomfortable to play at times, but they have a lot more utility that would make other swordies broken if they had them. It's just that players zero in too much on their flaws to notice the sheer power and versatility in their moveset. Lastly, we arrive at the final underrated character of this list. By the way, this is not ordered in any way. I'm not saying Bowser Jr. is number 1. Okay, so I'm gonna level with you guys. This next part is gonna be 1000% biased. Tri-State has so many Bowser Jr. mains that crush our locals, it's insane. What boggles my mind more than anything is that so many players ranked Bowser Jr. as like bottom 5 during the early days of Smash Ultimate, and though he did receive a series of patches that buffed him a lot, I cannot fathom how people thought this character is bad. First of all, Jr.'s moves are broken, I don't care what anyone says. He has a frame 4 jab that kills earlier than some characters' forward smashes. He has the original Steve up air combos in the form of his own up air. His forward smash is one of the best in the game. A frame 7 Added Shield up smash that kills pretty early, several attacks with extremely long lasting hitboxes, a solid Added Shield game, massively disjointed aerials that aren't even that slow. Clown Car spin out is stronger than a smash attack. He has a ledge trapping tool in the form of Mecha Koopa, Abandoned Ship, which can combo off Clown Car for easy kills. This character has so many jank-ass kill setups that matchup check the crap out of any player who isn't aware of them. Okay, rant aside, Bowser Jr. is a weird character. He's got a lot of moves that are good on paper, but in practice are somewhat impractical. He's very similar to Big Daddy Bowser in some ways, one of which being the need to mix up his approach and neutral despite not being very good at doing so. Bowser has a frame 6 command grab to pressure opponents who hold shield a lot, whereas Bowser Jr. has fake out options with Clown Cart, an attack that many label a worse version of Spin Dash. Although considering how broken Spin Dash is, a store-brand version of Spin Dash is still pretty insane. He also lacks a lot of pragmatic tools like safety on shield. This is somewhat alleviated by having 2 projectiles, but neither of them are threatening enough to really bait approaches, thus requiring him to approach himself even though his forward and back air are extremely unsafe on shield. Unlike his daddy though, Jr. doesn't have the same kind of explosive kill power. Most of his early kill options are hard to pull off safely. Clown Car spin out is one of the strongest moves in the game, but is minus 40 on shield. If your opponent blocks it, you're screwed. Then of course is up B, which is also very hard to pull off consistently. So yes, Bowser Jr. is objectively worse than Bowser and a lot of other characters, but he's nowhere near as bad as everyone makes him out to be. The guy has so many cool setups and traps that can take a lot of opponents by surprise. And there we have it. You may have noticed a trend among my underrated choices. All of them have good stuff, but not the right kind of good stuff or the right combination of good stuff. That being said, they're still good, and I feel like a lot of players can sauce tournaments if they just give them a try. I know there's a ton of other characters that could have made this list, but I chose the 5 that I thought deserved more credit than people give them the most. So with that said, let me know in the comments what your list of underrated characters would be and why. Or if you disagree with any of my choices, then feel free to elaborate as well. That's gonna be it for today. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. Really helps out the channel. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and while you're here, check out my WNOP series if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.